miracle after miracle, this race was as improbable as any race that you will ever see for president. I want to thank God for that, and I want to thank all of you across this country for what you have given, well, hopefully not just me and our family, but what you've given, which is a voice to those who are in many cases voiceless. And we have tried to be a witness not just for your stories and your voice, but to provide a positive and hopeful vision.
That was Rick Santorum speaking in Gettysburg today, where he suspended his campaign for president just days before the Pennsylvania primary. With us in our studio to talk about the upcoming election, Michael Morrill of Keystone Progress and Anna Puig of the Kitchen Table Patriots. Anna, what was your reaction to the Santorum withdrawal?
I was a little bit saddened. He wasn't my candidate by any means, but I think the process, the primary process, what we've been seeing for the past few months has been really helpful. It's been good for the Republican Party. We have been able to dominate the airwaves. The people have been able to be exposed to the candidates and see them unwrapped, per se. And, you know, I think that's probably going to change now going forward with Santorum dropping out of the race. Of course, we don't know yet what Newt Gingrich is going to be. But I think as far as Santorum goes, it was probably a smart move on his part, because I don't think he was going to win Pennsylvania. And we all know that it was really important for him to take Pennsylvania, especially with Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich winning their own states by a double-digit margin. So,
Michael Morrill, what do you think?
Well, this may be the only time tonight that I agree with Anna, but I was kind of disappointed and saddened too, because the more that Rick Santorum was in the race, the more Mitt Romney made a lot of gaffes and made a lot of errors. And so it has been driving up the president's numbers and making it more likely that the president will get reelected. So I was pretty excited to keep the fight going, because it exposed a lot of things and made it very clear that, especially for women, for Latinos, and for lots of other folks, that the Republican Party is not the place to be.
Well, but if I may interject real quick, I disagree with you in the sense that I think by keeping the focus on us, it took the focus away from Barack Obama. We all know that Barack Obama can do magic in front of a teleprompter. He can do magic on the airwaves, on television. So by focusing on the Republicans and giving us the voice, Barack Obama was kind of silenced for a few months. And, you know, it worries me that now we're going to change the dynamic and he's going to be center stage once again.
Well, welcome to the PCN call-in program. I'm Brian Lockman, and for the next hour, our guests will be talking about the 2012 election. You can join in the conversation, 1-877-PA-65001. That's 1-877-Pennsylvania-65001, or you can reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter. Anna, you said that Rick Santorum was not your candidate. Why not?
I belong to the Tea Party. I belong to the grassroots movement. This is what propelled me to get involved in politics. And for me, the most important focus that we have is fiscal responsibility. I think Rick Santorum, he's a wonderful person. I have met him in the past. I think he's a good guy. However, he really focused a lot on the social issues, and that's not what brings us together. And in order to beat Barack Obama out of Pennsylvania Avenue in November, I think we need a candidate that is going to bring us all together, whether we are conservatives, Republicans, independents, Democrats. We need to be able to come together to take him out of the White House. And I don't think Rick Santorum did the trick.
Do you think the Republican Party will be able to unite behind Mitt Romney?
I think we don't have a choice. We either unite behind whomever the nominee turns out to be. It's looking like it's going to be Mitt Romney, but we really don't know that. I don't think this is over until the last week of August. But if it is Mitt Romney, yes, we're going to have to all learn to love Mitt Romney and stomp the ground for him and get out to vote for him, and I absolutely will. He hasn't been my favorite either, but I will learn to love Mitt Romney, and I'm confident that we'll be able, with Barack Obama's record as it is today, gas prices the way they are, you know, the whole health care takeover, I think Americans are pretty upset, and I think we have a good chance of taking the White House back in November.
Michael Morrill, first of all, do you think the Democratic Party will have the kind of enthusiasm for Barack Obama that they had 4 years ago?
There's a huge enthusiasm gap, and it's in favor of the Democrats, and that's really, really surprising. If you look at what's happening in the Republican primaries, even with the
favor of the Democrats,
even if you look at the poll numbers, the enthusiasm gap is just the opposite of what you would anticipate. The numbers of people who showed up in the Republican primaries were way down from 4 years ago in state after state, even with the heated contests. That was really surprising, and I think that when people start to look at the difference between Mitt Romney and the president, they're going to be clearly in favor of the president. The numbers already are widening as people recognize who Mitt Romney is. His unfavorable rate has gone up almost to the point where it's at a par with Congress, which is pretty hard to overcome. Polling numbers can change during a race. We all know that. A poll is a snapshot of where things are at any particular point in time. But one thing that doesn't change very often is a favorable-unfavorable rate. That doesn't change significantly. And the favorable-unfavorable rate for Mitt Romney is way upside down for him. It's not for the president, and that's one of the things that I think is going to be really beneficial for the president come the fall.
Well, I also think let's wait and see what happens in June with the Supreme Court and the health care takeover. Let's see whether they're going to find this bill constitutional or unconstitutional.
Do you think that'll have an effect on the outcome of the presidential race?
I absolutely do. I think if it's found constitutional, you're going to see a rise up on the conservative side. Remember, many of us were against this bill and fought hard to have this not become law. So if this is found unconstitutional, then you're going to have the Barack Obama former supporters rise up against him. They're going to become former supporters because this was a big platform that he ran in 2008. So I really think either way it will hurt Barack Obama. So let's wait and see. And also, let's wait and see what happens with gas prices. I don't see him doing anything about it. You know, I paid $4.09 yesterday to be able to drive out here to Harrisburg. By the summertime, there's no telling what they're going to be. And, you know, from experience, I believe that Americans really only rise up when it hits them in the pocket. So.
Gas prices, will that be an issue in the fall?
Gas prices won't be an issue because I think Americans are smart enough to recognize that the president or Congress doesn't have a whole lot of impact in global markets when it comes to something that's pretty finite like petroleum products. So I don't think that's going to be the case. But I also disagree with Anna about the impact of the Supreme Court decision. I think it's probable that that if it's overturned, that the Democrats will rise up, just like if it's upheld, that Republicans will rise up and say we want to counteract the decision. I think there'll be a reaction to the Supreme Court in whichever way, and it'll mobilize some of the base, some of the activists on both sides of that, depending on the outcome.
Now, but on that note, I do have to say that Barack Obama can do something about the gas prices. I mean, we can drill. We're sending money down to Brazil for Brazilians to be able to drill off their shore. Why not invest in drilling here off the shores of the United States? We have plenty of petroleum off the shores of the United States, and we haven't even begun to talk about the natural gas and everything that has happened with the Keystone Pipeline. So I do think he's going to have to own up to the fact that he could have done something about gas prices, and he did absolutely nothing.
Well, let me counter that one. And because the reality is that, and most people don't recognize this, but the United States under President Obama is now a net exporter of petroleum. And that's something that people don't recognize. So, but despite all the rhetoric that you hear from the right about drill, which is not something that most Americans want, the reality is that during President Obama's tenure, we are now a net exporter. We have much more drilling going on than there was under President Bush, for instance, all over the United States. And so it's rhetoric, it's talking points, but it's not the truth.
Before we get too far into it, let's establish where each of you are coming from. Tell me about the Kitchen Table Patriots. What is that?
The Kitchen Table Patriots is a grassroots organization that I founded with a friend of mine. Actually, I came on board after the organization was founded back in 2009 when the stimulus, you know, you had the bailouts, you had the stimulus, you had all that. And a friend of mine decided that, you know, she's had enough and she was worried about the future of the country and she needed to do something. And so she formed the Tea Party. And I was a speaker at that Tea Party. And then from there, we decided, okay, a Tea Party is nice, protests are good, but it's not enough. Waving a flag is not enough, so we have to do more than that. And we decided, you know what, we can have a following. I mean, 2,000 people showed up at a park in the middle of the day on a Saturday. So, you know, there are people that are upset. Let's go beyond this. Let's do something more. So we started going to Washington, D.C. and Harrisburg and running buses and teaching people how to citizen lobby. And, you know, from that, we started forming our own healthcare town halls when the discussions over the healthcare bill were going on back in 2009. And, you know, we started to get a voice and momentum, and the organization grew, and we got noticed by national organizations. We worked with American Majority Action back in 2010, opened the Liberty headquarters to get out the vote for Mike Fitzpatrick and go up against Patrick Murphy, who's now running for Attorney General. And That was a success story. We knocked on 36,000 doors, and we made 20,000 phone calls and put out 5,000 signs. And, you know, those were all folks that I think were disenfranchised with the Republican Party, disenfranchised with the way the machine works. And, you know, with the grassroots, they found a voice, and they came to our headquarters, and together we were successful. And then shortly after that, I was offered a position with FreedomWorks, and I am now one of the 2 state directors that FreedomWorks has in Pennsylvania.
Michael Morrell, what is Keystone Progress?
Well, before I tell you about Keystone Progress, let me just tell you my opinions tonight are my opinions and not Keystone Progress. We don't get involved in elections, so that we need to make that separation. We do get involved in issues, however, and Keystone Progress started in 2008 to counter right-wing propaganda was the major reason for that. And we have grown from 0 members to 270,000, making us the largest progressive online organization in Pennsylvania. And what we do is we send out action alerts to our members, and we ask them to take action. In less than 4 years, we have gone from 0 members to just last month, we had our 1 millionth action. Over 1 million letters, emails, and faxes sent by Pennsylvanians to power brokers, members of the General Assembly, members of Congress, sometimes the President. And we don't just go after Republicans, although those are frequently our targets because we are admittedly left of center. But we also go after Democrats. We've gone after Governor Rendell. We've gone after mayors who are Democratic. We've gone after members of Congress who are Democratic when they don't uphold what we think are progressive values. So we're continuing to grow. We're starting with organizing local chapters. We're building a network with a variety of issues. We're focusing right now on the Affordable Care Act and making sure people know what's really in the bill and not the talking points. We're working on civil justice issues to make sure that people understand how we need to protect our courts that are being destroyed. And we're working to protect our civil liberties. So we work on a variety of issues. And again, we've grown from 0 to 270,000. Every month we grow by thousands and thousands.
And just to clarify, as far as the grassroots movement goes, as far as Kitchen Table Patriots goes and FreedomWorks goes as well, the same. It's not about being a Republican, a registered Republican. We have members who are Republicans, independents, Democrats have come to our side of the aisle. It's about upholding conservative principles of fiscal responsibility, less government, lower taxes.
We're going to be going to phones in just a minute. I want to ask one more question. You had an editorial or an op-ed piece in the Harrisburg Patriot today, which people could find at pennlive.com. And in it you said, Republican Party's objective has changed from consolidating voter support behind candidates that embody a core set of principles to being one of fundraising and merely winning elections. We end up with elected officials who often don't resemble the conservative ideals the Republican Party is founded upon. How does Mitt Romney match up with the conservative ideals the party is founded on?
I think Mitt Romney is, you know, the poster child of the Republican Party. He's second in line, you know. He was supposed to have been the nominee 4 years ago, and he wasn't. So, of course, the Republican Party now is going to run him again. I read something interesting today that said, so now the Santorum has dropped, and assuming that Newt Gingrich will not move forward, we have the guy who lost to the guy who lost to Barack Obama in 2008. Now, does that make any sense? It makes absolutely no sense. The only hope that I have is that it's been 4 years almost of Barack Obama. It's been 4 years of, you know, the economy continues to go down the tube. So I'm hoping that the American people will wake up and vote for Mitt Romney, who will actually slow down the process. But he's not by any means what I expected the Republican Party to put forth in this election cycle, considering the circumstances that we're living under in our country today.
Go ahead.
It'll be pretty interesting to see which Mitt Romney we get in the general election. Will it be the Democratic supported Mitt Romney of Massachusetts, who proposed Romney Care, which became Obamacare? Will it be the gay rights supporting Mitt Romney? Will it be the abortion supporting, Planned Parenthood donating Mitt Romney, which is the one that I'd like to see? If that guy runs, then that's great. Or will it be, as many people call him, Etch-a-Sketch Romney, who will shake it up and then just decide now that the primary is is over, he's going to be more running to the center. He's been somebody who called himself a progressive when he was governor of Massachusetts. He has called himself the most conservative candidate during the primaries, and now most likely he'll move to the center again. And so his own campaign aide called him, said it's like Etch-a-Sketch. You just shake it and you do it over again. I have a feeling that we're going to see the third Mitt Romney showing up in a few weeks.
Anna mentioned her opposition to the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare. You mentioned Romney Care and Obamacare. What do you think of the National Health Care Bill?
I think it's a pretty conservative bill. I think it's something that was proposed primarily by Republicans. The individual mandate was proposed by the Heritage Foundation, which is one of the most conservative think tanks. It was then adopted by Speaker Gingrich when he was the Speaker of the House. It was proposed and adopted into Massachusetts by a Republican governor. So it's a very Republican idea. If you look at the heritage of where it came from, it's clearly a Republican bill. It's and I think that's the genius of it. It's something that brought in Republican ideas, Democratic ideas, and syncretized them in a way that was really the American plan. It's not what people call it socialized medicine, because it's not. Socialized medicine is the government running everything. In this case, it's insurance companies who will be insuring the American people, not the public sector. It is very, very much a very conservative idea.
And I think you just hit the nail in the head. It goes to show that this two-party system that we have in this country, unfortunately, does not work. I'm not a proponent of forming a third party. I never was. I don't think we had the time to form a third party properly and actually win against Barack Obama in this election cycle. But there is something majorly wrong with both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Democratic Party has moved further from the left very fast, further to the left very, very fast, at a fast pace. And the Republican Party is always reaching across the aisle. They don't uphold the Republican principles that make me be a registered Republican. I'm only a registered Republican because I want to be able to have a voice in the primary. Otherwise, if I had a choice, I would not be a registered Republican right now, because the party really does not represent me. So we need some changes, and this is why I always tell the people who follow me and who work with me on a day-to-day basis on the grassroots, we need to become the Republican Party in order to bring it back to what it used to be.
Well, it's time to go to the phones. The number is 1-877-PA65001 if you want to join in the discussion. Our first caller tonight is Joe from Hershey. Go ahead, Joe.
Hi. I just want to comment quick on the oil thing and the gas prices. Number one, if we gave incentive, like he said, we export more oil than we import these days, and if we gave those gas companies incentive to keep their oil here in America, we'd be better off instead of giving them incentive to export their oil to foreign countries. But my main question is what are the Republicans going to do? And Anna touched on the subject about the third party. When the general election comes out and we do have a third party on the ballot in all 50 states. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say Buddy Roemer gets the third-party nod from Americans Elect. The Republicans are going to want to know why they purposely kept Buddy Roemer off the ballot or out of the debates. And second, the Democrats are going to resonate with Buddy Roemer's message, taking a lot of vote away from Barack Obama. So,
are you familiar with Buddy Roemer?
No, I'm not.
Michael?
Yeah, he ran in the Republican primaries, but never got any traction. And so the caller is right. There's this organization called Americans Elect that has tens of millions of dollars behind it. And what they are doing is having what they call the first online primary, so that everybody who's a registered voter anywhere in the United States can vote and choose. And so they're in that process right now. And Buddy Roemer is leading the online primary and is likely to get the nomination. They have enough money to get on the ballot in all 50 states. And so what you're going to most likely have is a Republican in Mitt Romney, and then a Republican in Buddy Roemer, and then a strong Libertarian. And that is not reflected in the polling yet. But you're likely to have three people on the right side of the aisle splitting the vote, so that while President Obama is way ahead in the polling right now, I think when Americans Elect and Buddy Roemer gets on the ballot, it's going to make it even more difficult for Romney and the Republicans to win.
And this is why I'm not a proponent of forming a third party right now, because I do realize that it would split the vote amongst the conservatives, and we would hand this election to Barack Obama. And considering all the damage that I believe he has done to our country in the past 4 years, imagine what he's going to be able to do going forward 4 more years and not facing another campaign. I mean, he already appointed 2 very left-wing Supreme Court justices. I don't even want to begin to think of what he's going to do as far as appointments to the Supreme Court, and, you know, and the list goes on. So I really think it would be the final, you know, it's the destruction of the United States of America. I don't want to sound like a radical, but I've seen this happening outside the borders of the United States. I've seen Latin America go down the same path that we're going down in this country today. It does not work.
What path is that?
That's the path towards 21st century Marxism, where you take over media, education, religion, and you indoctrinate the voters, the taxpayers of a country, to a point that they just become puppets of the government. And that's what's happening here. I mean, this healthcare bill that the healthcare law that we have right now in this country is a total government overreach. So there has never been anything done in this country like this prior to this becoming law. It amazes me how rapidly we're advancing towards progressivism in this country.
Wow. I was hoping we weren't going to go here, because Anna has called the president a Marxist, and I mean, this is not the kind of thing that we should be having in these kind of discussions. The reality is that if you understand what Marxism is, the president and the Democratic Party in modern politics, there's nothing in the United States that comes close to Marxism or socialism. As I said, the Affordable Care Act is the furthest thing from that. It's something that's actually very capitalist, and comes out of the Capitalist Heritage Foundation. Using this kind of rhetoric is the kind of thing that is frankly going to destroy the Republican Party. It's dividing it right now, and calling names and using epithets like Marxist and communist is so far from reality and so far out of the mainstream that the more people hear that kind of rhetoric, the more likely it is that the president is going to win, and there's going to be a Democratic sweep in Pennsylvania and other states as well.
On tomorrow night's call-in program, we're joined by one of the candidates hoping to represent Pennsylvania in the U.S. Senate. Republican David Christian will be here to talk about why he wants the chance to face Senator Bob Casey in the fall. That's tomorrow night at 7. Let's go back to the phones. Don from Bedford, you're on the air.
Yeah, hey, I think Barack Obama's doing an absolutely great job, considering the Tea Party. The Tea Party, all they want to do is do racial slurs against against the poor. Mm-hmm. And that's all and Romney, all he does is flip-flop. Who wants a president that flip-flops and is being pulled by the puppet strings of Donald Trump and Sarah Palin? The Tea Party is nothing but racial people, and yeah, I agree with you. It did divide the country, because I'm hoping in Pennsylvania there's not a Republican voted back in.
Can I take this?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, first of all, it wasn't a Republican back in 2008 during the campaign trail that told Joe the plumber that it was okay to redistribute the wealth around. So right there and then, that's what propelled me to get off my couch, because I thought to myself, okay, if this is not socialism, what is? So that was Barack Obama. So I don't understand how people can say that the Tea Party is being racist against Barack Obama, and that, you know, we're being racist against the poor people. No, what we don't want is to see the poor people, or anybody for that matter, dependent upon the government. The beauty of the United States of America is that you can make something of yourself through hard work and without government handouts. And that's what the Tea Party is all about. That's the message that the Tea Party is trying to get out there. And as far as the racism comment goes, I'm sorry, I'm going to disagree, because Barack Obama, he could be just as white as he can be African American. He's half and half. And I can say this because I am a Hispanic. I'm an immigrant. So, you know, there's no racism here. If he was a Caucasian president with the same ideology, pushing the same ideological things into this country, I would still fight to take him out of Pennsylvania Avenue in November.
The Tea Party is has been accused of racism, and I want to put that aside. I don't want to deal with the racist part of it. What I do want to deal with is the notion that they're somehow some independent organization that just grew up from the grassroots. The organization that Anna works for is funded by Dick Armey and run by the PACs and the corporations, so it's not like it's some independent grassroots organization. It's something that was organized by the Republicans, and they're the same people who were out on the streets during the during the 2008 campaign. Some of the people who were Tea Party leaders in Pennsylvania are the same people who were, if you see the videos of what was going on during the election, they were the people who were carrying monkeys around, calling the president a monkey, the same, very same people. So it is something that they have to deal with, and they have to deal with effectively.
But I think that happens within any organization, within any movement. You're going to have your extremes, and you can't control that. Listen, I've been to a lot of Tea Party protests. I was at the first initial 9/12 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, in Washington, D.C., where we had over 1 million people, and I didn't see anything racial about that protest. I'm yet to encounter any kind of racism in any Tea Party protest or any Tea Party activity, and believe me, I would be the first one to walk away from that if I saw that. But of course, you're going to have factions within any movement. So yeah, you will have the birthers, you will have the people who stand for something a little more radical, but I don't think that's what the Tea Party means at all. Tea Party is about fiscal responsibility, lower taxes, and limited government, and not spending out of control that we've been doing. And we started with Bush. The Republicans are at fault as well. It's not just Barack Obama. Barack Obama just took it to a different level.
Let's go back to the phones. 1-877-PA-65001 is the phone number. Ken from Bucks County, it's your turn.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. What precipitated me to call tonight was the gentleman's comment earlier about the low voter turnout in the Republican primaries. I'm going to accept that as a fact. And my comment is I think the Republican Party is not putting forth very strong candidates. They didn't do it in the last election, and you saw what happened. I would like to hear your comment on that. And I have a prescription for a winning ticket, Republican or Democrat. Put forth a program to save Medicare and Social Security, and you will see the Republicans come out in droves to vote for the candidate who puts together a practical, reasonable program to save those programs. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The Republicans don't put forth any strong candidates, but the candidates that the Tea Party and other folks on the conservative side of the Republican Party put forth get rejected even by the Republican Party. So the most conservative candidates can't even survive in a Republican primary. So the likelihood of them surviving and winning in a general election is slim. To the second point about saving Medicare and Social Security, you're absolutely right again. The Ryan budget is a budget that is one that would destroy Social Security. It would privatize it. It's one that would destroy Medicare. It would privatize it. Privatizing something means that we're going to turn our back on it. So the first step is sending out vouchers. The next step is that you cut the vouchers and how much that provides, and little by little it becomes such a small portion of what you would need to afford to provide the service that there's no reason to keep it going.
Yeah, I just have to add that I think, it took 60 years for us to get to where we are today in this country, and it's not going to change overnight. We're not going to go back to, the conservative principles that I'm striving to see in the United States overnight. So I believe in incrementalism. I think we can do things one step at a time. No, Mitt Romney is not the perfect candidate, but I think he's a step in the right direction. And like I said previously in the show, it's about Americans rising up and becoming part of government. I think we've taken our freedoms for granted. I think we're too busy watching the Jersey Shore and American Idol, and it's time for us to become the Republican Party so that we can restore the party to what it used to be rather than forming a third party. And it will take years to get there.
We're going to go back to the phones in just a minute. I want to tell you about some programming coming up on PCN. Tonight, after the call-in, On the Issues examines school district finances with Michael Crossy, president of the Pennsylvania State Education Association. That's coming up at 8 o'clock. Tomorrow afternoon at 1, PCN is providing live coverage of the Pennsylvania Legislative Reapportionment Commission's meeting. Watch as they continue to develop the plan for the state's new House and Senate districts. That's to replace the plan that was thrown out by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court a couple months ago. David Christian, a Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate, is the guest on tomorrow night's PCN call-in program. Join in with your comments and questions about the primary Senate race starting at 7. PCN Tours travels to Easton this week for a look inside a colorful Pennsylvania manufacturing company and institution. See how your favorite Crayola crayons are made Sunday night at 8. Want to interact with us online? Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter for updates on all of your favorite PCN programs. And remember, if you like the programming you see on PCN, you can thank your local cable provider. They carry PCN as a public service. We receive no state money. Anna, before we go back to the phones, I want to ask you about the Pennsylvania Senate race. There are 7 candidates in the race seeking to run against Bob Casey. Do you have a favorite candidate?
There's now 5 candidates in the race, and as a FreedomWorks employee, unfortunately, we have not endorsed this race. We're looking into it. We may still do it, so I'm not able to comment on, who my favorite candidate, who my pick would be. But I think right now what we're seeing is that we have 3 top candidates that have emerged, and that would be Tom Smith, Sam Rohr, and Steve Welch. I think it's a very interesting race. Sam Rohr has really risen in the polls as of late, and I think one of the reasons is because he's got a proven record. He's been a lifelong Republican. There's something to show for Sam Rohr, where with the other 2 candidates, Tom Smith and Steve Welch, they have flip-flopped. Tom Smith was a Democrat for most of his life. He was actually a committee man in the Democratic Party. He didn't switch parties until, I believe, August of last year. So there is no proven record there that he's going to do the right thing if elected. And the same goes for Steve Welch. Both very great individuals. I've met with all of them. I have a lot of respect for all 3 of them. But I think Steve Welch voted for Sestak in the primary a few years back, and I know that he talks about redemption a lot, and I've had this conversation with him, and I think it's great, and I believe that he's a changed man, but I don't think he should be given the opportunity at this point to so quickly go down to Washington D.C. and represent us.
What is FreedomWorks?
FreedomWorks is a national grassroots organization that, stands for what we've been talking about here: lower taxes, limited government, fiscal responsibility. And FreedomWorks is currently really focusing on Senate races. They have not endorsed a Republican candidate for the presidential race and have decided instead to focus on Senate races so that we can actually win the Senate back and keep control of the House, because we don't know at this point in time what's going to happen as far as the presidential race goes and whether or not we're going to beat Barack Obama out of the White House. So we believe that the smart thing to do is to secure the Senate and keep the momentum in the House.
Michael Morrell, how does Bob Casey, the incumbent senator, match up with your principles?
With Keystone Progress's principles, he's pretty much in line with most of them, but we're a pro-choice organization. Bob Casey is not. So we have some disagreements with Bob Casey. But I think that, and he faces a primary too, by the way. He's going to win handily, but he does have a primary. But I think that what happened today with Senator Santorum withdrawing from the race is going to change the dynamics of the Republican primary. One of the things that let me give a caveat. I'm notorious for predicting wrong. So I thought that my former state rep, Sam Rohr, had a very good chance of winning. But the 3 major candidates, Sam Rohr, he's really the base of the party. That's what his strength is. But he doesn't have any money and he doesn't have any TV. We had Tom Smith, who's running basically a TV-only campaign and doesn't have much support. And then you have Welch, who's running a campaign hoping that the party endorsement will win it for him. But with Sam now no longer having the coattails of Rick Santorum, I think it's going to be really difficult for the base to turn out and support Sam Rohr. So despite the polls, I think you're right about the polls, but I think that now that you don't have Rick Santorum turning out the conservative vote, it's going to be very, very difficult for somebody like Sam to win.
We actually had a grassroots conservative coalition formed a couple of weeks ago, and where all these different grassroots groups throughout Pennsylvania sent out a straw poll to our members, and some groups have over 5,000 members, so it's pretty significant. And Sam Rohr won that straw poll by a significant margin. There's no doubt about it that he's the preferred candidate of the grassroots. I think he's got momentum. I think the fact that Steve Welch and Tom Smith are kind of going at each other's throat right now it has worked to Sam Rohr's advantage. He's kind of staying out of it and just showing the people of Pennsylvania that he has a track record, that he is what the grassroots is looking for as far as, keeping government in its place. And, he's pro-life, he's pro-Second Amendment, he's everything that we believe in and that we stand for. So I think he can keep his momentum going.
Next caller's from Marionville. John, you're on PCN.
Yes, we get originally talking about oil prices. Half an hour ago, the oil prices are set on the world market, and I'm just curious for the right wing if they're going to blame President Obama for the high price of gasoline. I never hear Fox News say anything about the price of natural gas, which was $12 per 1,000 cubic foot when the president got elected. Now it's $2. It's predicted to go to $1 this summer. And I just want to know another thing from the right wing. How come, in order to make poor people work, we've got to cut their benefits, but in order to make rich people work, we've got to give them tax breaks from the government?
I'm not sure what benefits have been cut from the poor people, so I wouldn't be able to answer that question. And as far as the blame game goes, I think President Obama is still blaming President Bush for the state of the economy. So it wasn't the conservative wing that started the blame game. I think President Obama has been playing it for the past 4 years.
Let's take another call, this time from Doylestown. John, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. I would like to thank Anna and the Tea Party for acting as a counterbalance to progressivism, which is simply another form of socialism.
Thank you.
And I want to ask your opinion about this Occupy Wall Street movement. How would you compare it to the real Tea Party? Is it genuine, or is it a cheesy leftist imitation of the Tea Party?
I think it's apples and oranges. I come to Harrisburg frequently, and I see the occupiers. I've been watching the occupiers sitting under a tent in front of the steps of the Capitol for, 6 months to close to a year now. It's been a little over 6 months, and I often wonder, are these people going to work? How are they paying their bills? Where the Tea Party activists, we all have jobs. We are plugging along. We disagree with the government and with the things that the government is doing, but we are working and we don't want any handouts. So I think the Tea Party and the Occupier movement is completely different. I have nothing against wealthy people. I said this before we started the show tonight. I am part of the 99%, but I am striving to be a part of the to become a part of the 1%. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to achieve that with this job. But, there's nothing wrong with working hard, doing well for yourself, and making something of yourself. That is the American dream. That is why my family and I immigrated to this country and left Brazil so many years ago.
Michael?
And it's why my mother and my grandparents came to this country, too, as I was saying earlier, as illegal immigrants. My mother and my grandparents came to this country without papers. But they came here for the same reason that Anna's family came here, and that's for a real opportunity. And what is different about the United States is that we recognize that together we can be stronger than just as individuals. That's why Pennsylvania is called a commonwealth. The founders of Pennsylvania, who were the founders of the United States in many ways, writing the founding documents, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, all written here in Pennsylvania. They recognized that we are a commonwealth because and what that means is working together, sharing in common to create wealth. That's what the United States has always been about. Now, Anna and other people would like to call that socialist or communist, but the reality is that that's how we have always, as Americans, worked. We recognize that working together, we can be stronger than being separate. And I think that's what the Occupy movement is about, recognizing that corporations have not been paying their fair share. Over the last few decades, corporate taxes have gone down significantly so that they actually pay a lower percentage of their income than they have in decades. The same is true of the wealthy. They're getting richer and richer and paying less and less in taxes. And that needs to turn around. All of us need to pay our fair share, the wealthy included.
Hey, Tony from... let's take another call.
Okay.
Tony's been waiting for a while. Tony from East Liberty, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show. I just want to say that the Democrats seems to have a short memory of the last election when they got pounded into the ground by working people, basically, which I call the Tea Party, who are people who are tired of paying taxes for everybody else, for the freeloaders and those people, who are rich. I don't care. That's what this country is based on, capitalism. If you can become rich, you do become rich, and I don't think you have to be ashamed for being rich or being successful. But the Democrats just seem to love to rap against people who are successful, and they just want to, they want everybody to be in a welfare state, basically, and that's what they're striving for. So if Obama gets elected again, we're going to have people on their knees begging the government for help, to survive. And I think that's what the Democrats want to do.
Boy, couldn't be further from the truth.
Is that what the Democrats want to do?
Of course not. I mean, that's one of those talking points, stereotypes. These are the kind of callers who call into these kind of programs to just say those ludicrous things. The United States is a country, as I said before, that works best when it works together. And one of the things that has happened lately is that we have been divided. We do have a 99% versus a 1%. And that 99% is losing over the last few decades, and the 1% are getting wealthier and wealthier. Now it's not a rich versus poor thing, it's a fairness issue. When you look back at the way things were in prior decades, there was much more commonality. There was less of a gap between the rich and the poor. The gap between the rich and the poor now in the United States is worse than in most countries, including Latin American countries, where it used to be an oligarchy that reigned. But in country after country, the gap is spreading between the rich and the poor. That's not the way the United States has ever been, and it's not the way it should be.
What is fairness?
Let's have a long conversation. Fairness is... When I speak about fairness, I talk about, I mean a system where there's much more equity, there's much more opportunity for all people. That hasn't happened lately. If you are wealthy, you start off wealthy, you're more likely to stay wealthy. The mobility between lower income, middle income, and higher income isn't there like it has been in the past. So when I talk about fairness, I talk about fairness of opportunity, where everybody has an equal opportunity to make it, where there's an equal burden, where the wealthy and the poor and the middle class all share in the way that things should be. That hasn't happened again. As I've said over and over again, the wealthy have abrogated their responsibility and have been putting more and more of it on the poor and working class.
Anna, what is fairness to you?
Fairness to me is being able, I believe in the right to life, and I think that's the only right that we really have that we're endowed with. And other than that, we have the right in this country to work hard, make something of ourselves, and become somebody, and it's doable, and that's fairness. I don't want to be like everybody else. If I wanted to be like everybody else, I would have stayed back in South America. I wouldn't have come up to the United States. Like I said in the beginning of the program, I started with nothing. I worked at Domino's Pizza answering the phone. I smelled like pizza every night when I went back to my dorm room, and my roommates hated me, but it was a job and it paid my bills. I worked in daycares. I did jobs that I did not want to do. But little by little, I climbed the corporate ladder, and I made something of myself, and, without having any debt, without being dependent on the government. And I think what's changing in this country is the ideology that, that you can be somebody by working hard. The upcoming generations are being indoctrinated to just believe that, the government should be giving everything to them. That's not fair. So I don't think it should be that way.
And it isn't that way. There's no. That's not the reality. The reality is so far from that. You're talking about stereotypes from the 1960s, which weren't even true then. But the welfare system has been emasculated over the last few decades to the point where it's very, very difficult to stay on welfare, to get on welfare. Those things just don't take place the way that it's a caricature, and it's not based in reality whatsoever.
I disagree with you, and
show some facts.
And I see the rich being completely penalized in this country. You know, the so-called 1%, these are people who are creating jobs for the middle class. Without them, who's going to create the jobs? There's going to be no private sector. We're all going to be dependent upon the government. I'm sorry, I don't think that works. I mean, look at what's happening in Europe, in Greece, in England. I mean, let's move away from South America. Europe is a disaster because of the government takeover that's taken place over there. The biggest employer in the United Kingdom is the national health care system. So I just disagree with you on that.
Let's go back to the phones. George from Williamsport, it is your turn. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for having me on. Basically, two comments and then a question. Actually, Michael, I think you do need to check some of your facts. At first, you started out and you were talking about Marxism, and you said that the Democratic Party isn't a Marxism. Obviously, you've never heard of Norman Mattoon Thomas. And when you're talking about this fair share, you can't penalize capitalism. And we have a president who doesn't even believe in the United States Constitution. I mean, that's just wrong. Secondly, somebody had already mentioned it, but the difference between the Tea Party protesters and the Occupy Wall Street protesters, if you look at the violence, nonviolence, that sort of thing, it's like night and day. But my main thing is that I wanted to talk about is we have this problem with Mexico, correct? We have an immigration problem. Everybody's talking about this. Now, what my comment is basically this. We get the bulk of our oil from Canada. Mexico has oil. Why can't we work out some kind of a deal with Mexico? We'll even build the refineries for them. We can train their people. They don't have to come over the border to get jobs in the United States. They can have the job in their own country. So there's no reason to come to the United States. They can make money from there, and also the country can make money. Now, obviously, we have to deal with the drug cartel, but if we put military down there, we could probably do that. So I'd like to hear your comments on that.
It seems like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. On one hand, you're saying that the government shouldn't be involved in things, and then you're saying that the government should not only get involved in the oil industry, but it should create an oil industry in another country. I don't think that's the case. But again, what we're dealing here with is talking points and not reality. The president is a Marxist? Do you even understand what Marxism is? When people throw out terms like that, I think that they just need a basic education. They must have been. I just can't believe that anybody has gone to school beyond the third grade and starts throwing out terms like Marxist when you're dealing with the president or Democrats or anybody in this country. There has never been anything resembling Marxism in the United States, and everybody knows that.
Let's go back to the phone. Susan from Camp Hill, you're on PCN.
Hi, thank you for taking my call this evening. Mr. Morrill, I think you're being incredibly disingenuous about the individuals who back you, and I think you should be more upfront, like Anna is. I don't think there's anything such as a perfect system, but the idea that we're going to equalize everyone is absolutely ludicrous, and I think you know that, and I think Anna knows that too. You're talking about fairness as in let's take from the people who work and give to the people who don't. That's just completely ridiculous and is a typical argument from the people who largely back your organization, which are the union officials in the state. So I'd like you to talk about what you really think is good, because the president has already said that there's no such thing as a shovel-ready job. He made that up. So just exactly what do you think is going to revive Pennsylvania when Pennsylvania is still clinging to things that happened 100 years ago?
What do you think is going to revive Pennsylvania?
I think what we need is to move into the 21st century. I think the first thing that we need to do is revitalize our public education system. Stop cutting public education. Stop cutting our secondary institutions. Penn State, University of Pittsburgh, and the state universities are all being cut. That's ridiculous. When we're trying to move people into the 21st century, prepare people for 21st century jobs, and we're cutting education from K through 12, and then in the colleges and universities, we need to start recognizing that Pennsylvania was a leader in renewable energy back in the 70s and 80s, and all of that was cut. Westinghouse, GE were the places where wind turbines were built. Those kinds of things have all been offshored and moved now to China. We need to start bringing back American manufacturing and focusing on creating an economy that has educated workforce, a good workforce, and start bringing some of these jobs back home. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, and we need to lower the corporate taxes so that we can attract people to stay in the state of Pennsylvania and to continue to create jobs in the state of Pennsylvania. We need to explore the beautiful natural gas industry that we've been so blessed with here in Pennsylvania. That's really where the opportunity is. And as far as the university funding goes, I'm going to disagree with you. I think those universities have plenty of funding. They need to figure out a better way to reallocate the money. It's like telling your child, thinking that your child's going to starve if you don't give them ice cream. They can figure out a way to survive without much of the government funding. So I disagree with you on that. But I think there's a lot of opportunity in Pennsylvania, and let's start with the natural gas industry.
Let's go up to Williamsport now and hear from Burr.
My question is for Anna. What makes Sam Rohrer different from the other candidates for Senate in the Republican primary, and do you think he is a legitimate candidate to beat Bob Casey?
I absolutely think Sam Rohrer is a legitimate candidate to beat Bob Casey because he was actually in the legislature for 18 years and he has a proven track record. And you can put side by side the way Bob Casey has voted and the way Sam Rohrer has voted. Where with the other candidates, while I have a lot of respect for all of the candidates in the race, I think they all bring something great to the plate. They don't have that proven track record. And, Sam Rohrer has been a lifelong Republican. He has been a lifelong conservative Republican, most importantly. So I think, he's got what it takes to beat Bob Casey and to actually represent Pennsylvanians down in Washington, D.C., if we so choose to vote for him. And I also understand that Sam Rohrer really takes a hard look before he votes for a bill. He looks at the constitutionality of the bill. He looks at the morality of the bill. He looks at whether or not the bill will increase spending. He looks at whether or not it's a necessary bill. And I think that's all really important. So I think, yes, he's definitely a contender in this race.
Well, I'm not so sure. I think you've got three candidates vying to be, it's kind of like with the NCAA tournament where they have that 65th team that's added these days. I think that's really what you're looking at. Bob Casey in all the polling is clearly the favorite and is going to win hands down. So it doesn't really matter if it's Smith or Welch or Rohrer. None of them are going to have much of a race against Bob Casey. Now, of course, he's going to have to run a very serious race. There are no givens in politics. But if you look at the polling and if you look at the popularity of Bob Casey, it's pretty much a done deal.
I think, Bob Casey, it's an interesting person here because apparently I've never met the guy. I don't know where he hides because nobody ever sees him. But, he ran a campaign as a moderate Democrat, more of a Reagan Democrat. But then now I think a friend of mine said this on television the other day, and I thought it was very appropriate. He's become Obama's acolyte, and, he votes to the left of Harry Reid. So, I do think Bob Casey is beatable in Pennsylvania under the circumstances that our country is under. And I think these top three candidates that we have each one of them can give Bob Casey a run for his money.
We have an Allentown Morning Call Muhlenberg College poll on asking people if the 2012 U.S. Senate election were held today, who would get your vote? At the moment, Bob Casey, 39%, Republican candidate, 29%. Depends on the candidate, 15%, not sure, 16%. And if I can find it, there was another poll of the, no, I didn't bring it down with me, another poll of the Republican candidates, and it showed the leader was, I believe, Tom Smith at 9% and Steve Welsh in second place at 8%. So.
And I think that has been fluctuating through, I think we'll agree on that. It's been fluctuating through the past couple of weeks. I mean, I know over the weekend I saw a poll where Sam Rohrer was at the top, and then I heard today that Tom Smith is back on top. So, and I think you're going to see that fluctuation all the way up to primary day. So it's definitely an interesting race for all of us to watch in Pennsylvania going, up to the 24th of April. So.
Next caller is from Downingtown. Linda, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call. I've just been watching this for a little while, and you guys have had a couple of talking points. But one comment that I would just like to make, and I'm not on either one side or the other. I'm a registered Democrat, but I have some values some people might say are conservative, but I call myself a Democrat just because I believe that the government is here to help those who can't help themselves or help those who do want to help themselves but just need an extra leg up. Anna was talking about the fact that she worked, many jobs, working pizza, this and that. We've all done that kind of stuff. My concern is that you know, a lot of these people who may be on food stamps or need medical assistance or whatever, you know, if you're working a minimum wage job, I'd like to get the opinion of both of the panelists. You know, I think in Pennsylvania it's like $7.25 an hour. You know, when you go to your local grocery store, a gallon of milk is $4, okay, and a loaf of bread is what? $3.50, $4. So the average person who is lower middle class has to work 1 hour, 60 minutes to afford those two items. That doesn't even include buying the gas to get in the car to go to the job. That doesn't include anything else. And so when you talk about, oh, you know, these people, you know, let's blame the 1%, this and that, I don't think that that's what Michael's talking about or Occupy Wall Street. What I think people are frustrated, at least personally for me, is that the opportunities are not really available for many of us. And there does seem to be a definite difference between people that don't have to worry about making $7.25 an hour and those that do.
Yeah, it's a different economy than one that our parents grew up in, and even that Anna and I have grown up in. Things are changing drastically, and as I said earlier, the purchasing power for working people over the last few decades has been dropping. And so you're absolutely right. It makes it very, very difficult for people to make ends meet just with one job. And so what you see in many cases, I live in West Reading. In my neighborhood, I know probably a good portion, maybe a majority of the people in my neighborhood work two jobs. When my father was a breadwinner, he made enough money so that one person, he could raise the family. That economy doesn't exist anymore. Now both my wife and I work, and we both have decent jobs, so we have a decent living. But I know plenty of families where both the husband and wife work, and they both work two jobs just to make ends meet, and they are barely making ends meet. That's a very, very different situation than we had 10, 20, 30 years ago, and that's not going to turn around quickly. It's something that we're going to have to really work toward. And we're not talking about blaming the wealthy. What we're asking for the wealthy is to pay the share that they've paid historically in this country. The tax rates for the wealthy have been dropping, dropping, dropping. The tax rates for corporations have been dropping, dropping, dropping. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is if it's at the expense of working families and low-income people.
Michael, if someone wants to find out more about your organization, where's your website?
We have a lot of them, but the main one is KeystoneProgress.org, and you can find out as much as you want there, the allies that we work with, and the kind of work that we do is pretty clear on our website, KeystoneProgress.org.
Anna, we have about a minute left. You get the last word.
The last word is I think we have a problem in our hands. It's a monumental problem, and I think we have an opportunity. This is the election of a lifetime, and we have an opportunity to change things and put this country in the right direction. I do have some talking points that I want to share with the audience. Under the first 1,000 days of Barack Obama, the national debt has increased by $4.2 trillion. The U.S. now spends $4.2 billion more per day than it takes in. 2.2 million jobs have been lost. 140,000 folks have been added to the government payroll, and 3 million more Americans live in poverty now. I think it's time that we find some solutions for these. For the issues at hand.
And I would agree if any of those facts were true.
They were true. They are true. I mean, you can do your research tonight when you go home.
And do you have a website that you would like to steer us to?
Yes, I can be found at www.thekitchentablepatriots.org or at www.freedomworks.org.
We're out of time. Anna Puig, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
And Michael Morrill, thank you. Thank you. Join us on tomorrow's PCN call-in program when David Christian, a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, will be here to talk about his role in the upcoming Pennsylvania primary election. And a reminder, if you did not get a chance to get your comment in, you can join the discussion as it continues on our website, PCNTV.com. I'm Brian Lockman. Thanks for watching.